All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. You found us here at KGV Customs, home of some of the best custom gun content on the web. We share these custom guns in hopes of sharing some knowledge and to catalog some of the great pieces that come through our shop. Thank you for joining us. Today we've got a little break from 1911s here, a fine Smith & Wesson revolver converted to what you see here by Ted Yost. If this kind of thing interests you, I encourage you to jump into the description of this video, subscribe to our email list. We are notifying of news at the shop and new inventory through that email list. So if you like the kind of things we show around here, by all means, feel free to sign up for that. This gun is a 1977 Smith & Wesson Model 25-2. And the Model 25, of course, was the target successor of the Model 1917, which was the revolver fielded by U.S. forces for parts of World War I and World War II. Large frame, they were an end frame revolver. Of course, the 1917 had a fixed sight set up on it, also had a tapered barrel. The post-war years, we saw the Model 25, the target version, so to speak, to come on the scene. Of course, it wasn't called a Model 25 until 1957. Prior to that, it was a 45 hand ejector target. But those original post-war guns also had tapered barrels, so you will see some pre-Model 25s that have target sights and tapered barrels, but pretty rare gun. Smith & Wesson rolled out the Model 25 in earnest, and the most prolific one being the 25-2 variation. These guns had a heavyweight barrel, same as the 44 Magnums. And they would have had a 6.5 inch barrel on them. And that's, I believe, all they were really cataloged in was that 6.5 inch barrel. Of course, there were 6 inch barrels made as Smith & Wesson moved away from 6.5 inch to just flat 6 inch barrels in the 70s. This gun likely would have had a 6.5 inch barrel. I do know that this gun shipped to Texas originally, and unknown what life it lived prior to meeting Ted Yost. But this gun now has a 3.5 inch barrel. Ted, of course, chopped down the original barrel to 3.5 inches for concealment and carry. Ted, I think the last number I heard him say was around 100 or 125 revolvers he converted to full house revolvers like this. And I would wager that very, very few of those are end frames, certainly less than a fourth of them. Primarily, we'll see K and J frames, some L frames. If you go back and look at my last Ted Yost video, it was an L frame Model 681. Also a fantastic piece. This one is an end frame, so it's a 6-shot 45 ACP. The gun runs by use of moon clips. So you would put 6 rounds in these moon clips and drop the whole assembly in there, sort of like a speed loader, but the clip stays in the ammo in the gun. And then, of course, you would eject all 6 at once when you fired them. These revolvers will fire, usually, without the use of moon clips. The chambers are cut that they should headspace properly without moon clips. But for best reliability, I don't advise using these without moon clips. Of course, there is 45 auto rim brass, which is a 45 auto case dimensionally, and it has an extended rib that makes up the space the moon clip would otherwise take. So if you want to run these guns like a traditional 6-shot Smith & Wesson, you would want to source some 45 auto rim brass, and then you can unload partial cylinders. If you only fired 1 round, you can, push them out slightly and pluck that 1 fired round out and put 1 fresh round in, or what have you. Whatever reason you might have to not want to load and eject all 6 at once. So we've got a 3.5 inch barrel, making this a great carry gun and would be a great duty revolver for those officers out there that still carry a revolver. The muzzle crown is bright polish and recessed to protect that crown. The front sight was then pinned into the rib on the barrel. Of course, originally this gun would have had a patridge blade up on a base, out here at 6.5 inches, and a fully adjustable rear sight. Well, Ted's conversion involves pinning in a front gold line sight, and he then hand matted, textured this top surface because the top surface changed when he did the conversion. So the original serrations were removed. And then this rear sight, you can't even see it. I doubt if we put a picture in here if you'd even be able to pick it up because Ted did such a tight job of fitting it. But this rear sight is a separate piece from the rib on the barrel. They mate right at the seam. And this rear sight is fully machined by Ted, a full custom unit to replace that adjustable sight in this gun. That does a couple things. One, it removes the fragility of an adjustable sight and also the ability of that sight to lose zero because this sight cannot move. It's bolted to the gun and cannot move. And also, it gives a much better sight picture, in my opinion, as we have a full black rear without the step that is in a Smith & Wesson factory adjustable rear sight. The other option, of course, would be to go with a Bowen adjustable rear sight if you like this sight picture but need the adjustment. But Ted, let me get the paperwork out. I think he says what he zeroed this gun with. Yeah, it was zeroed with 230 grain ball ammunition, which would be the standard, of course, for 45 ACP. Other things on the build sheet from Ted: a complete action job, including new springs, polish and round the trigger face, which he does a fantastic job of, and he leaves those bright polished, and they really do stand out nice on these satin finished guns. Of course, the Yost proprietary sights, front and rear. The hammer has been shortened, reprofiled, and checkered, so this gun originally likely would have had a 1/2 inch wide and a very long target hammer spur on it, as most 25-2s did. And Ted has dramatically shortened that to a carry profile, while still giving you the ease and ability of cocking this gun in single action, should you want to fire it that way. Fabricate new sighting rib, apply what he calls a linen texture to the top surface. Custom remarked the original barrel, or the barrel with original style text. So because of the chop job, the original roll mark would have kind of fell off the front of the barrel and not been centered and would have just looked crude. So Ted remarks the barrel back in the proper location for a 3.5 inch barrel, and then marks on this side the same markings that the factory would have had. 45 cal, model 1955. Bevel cylinder front and rear, so the gun has received a good carry bevel so that it is not harsh on you or your holster. And then the Yost round butt conversion, which is a great thing to do to these revolvers. Matter of fact, I built a model 28 Highway Patrolman a few years ago, and I really tried to emulate that with that build because it feels great in the hand and eliminates that sharp heel that end frames have that kind of gives you away, so to speak, as it sticks out of your holster and can kind of point through your concealment garment. This gun has hand-fit Craig Spiegel grips, so Ted would have taken more than likely unfinished Spiegel grips. I didn't ask him specifically about this one, but I know he did source a lot of raw wood grips from Spiegel, so they would have had the shaping and the sanding done, but wouldn't have been finished. And Ted did that because he would fit them to the frame, especially guns that were round butted. You needed to cut through the finish if they were already finished, so it made more sense to use raw grips in that regard. And they're just a nice figured walnut to kind of round the package out. This gun, I believe, was built by Ted around 2018, 2017. I remember pictures of it when he first finished it, and it certainly turned some knobs in my head as I was getting ready to build that Model 28, which is a 4-inch gun, but very similarly laid out to this. So I can always thank Ted for his inspiration on special projects like that, because he's done so many of these very unique type builds and done them all well. So this gun is just an excellent example of Ted's work, and one I'm really honored to share with you guys, and happy to have a chance to sit down and make a video on quick. If you guys have any questions about it, feel free to drop them in the comments or reach out to us. And we appreciate you all tuning in. There'll be some videos here at the end, other Ted guns and other videos that you might enjoy. Please feel free to watch.